So for a 17-year-old or a person at any age, having your colors done is a tremendous psychological lift. In other words, I felt when I had my colors done that I was different because my coloring was winter type, and the difference was great. It gave me a sense of confidence almost instantaneously that I could go on another track and
those are winter over here.
Feel myself, yeah. And really what the colors are, it's based on the colors that are already existing in your skin tone and your overall natural makeup, meaning the color of your hair, skin, and eyes are what the colors are based on. So you repeat that in your clothing, meaning my coloring is extremely high in contrast. I have very, very dark brown, almost black hair, fair skin with a lot of blue undertone in the skin, which is cool tones, and green eyes. So I repeat that concept in my clothing. Black and white create contrast. Colors that are clear, what we call squeezed out of the tube, are striking type colors. And they're often reflective of winter, although that is not used so much. What we call now a striking type would be striking contrast. And that gives a person a visual with two words, that it's contrasting and it's striking. Then the idea is, as you add more white into the colors that are squeezed out of the tube, it becomes a little more saturated with white, and that lifts the colors and creates a pastel effect. And that would be what you find often in spring. Light, bright colors and multicolors. Poppies, green grass. Again, the evoking of spring as a concept is really helpful to get a visual idea. Now, people with this coloring tend to be people that have bright pink undertones in their skin, and often you think of blue eyes, blonde hair, light bright skin. I didn't use an example for winter types yet of famous people, but I'll do that at the end. So it's light, bright, and that would also be played out in one's dressing by wearing maybe 3 or 4 colors in medium tone. So you would never want to create a lot of contrast because that would take away from the person's natural coloring. It would be too harsh. And then the third type of coloring that we talk about is subtle blended. And that's when you begin to gray down the colors and create an effect you often see in the summer, very blended, very quiet pastel time. Colors are starting to fade and summer is ending. That type of person doesn't have great contrast or brightness in the skin. There's a blended quality to the person's hair, skin tone, and eyes. So again, you take that concept and you apply it to your clothing, and you would wear more of a blended color tone, subtler, and almost more monochromatic. There's no yellow in this skin tone palette, this palette of color. No brown, no harsh tones. It's literally blended and very quiet. Almost a fog is over the colors. And again, I'll go through famous people that help make the concept clearer to people that have ideas or other examples to draw on. And the fourth type of coloring is what we call earthy rich colors. And there's tremendous warmth in these colors, and it's the kind of warmth that you experience in the fall. Leaves turning brown, deep green, a lack of harsh notes. There's no black in this color range. They're very dynamic colors. They're not soft and grayed down like the summertime, but very dynamic, warm, yellow, mellow. That's why we call them fall often. We used to use the seasons, and you can see how the seasons are helpful to give a feeling or an image, or how would you say, evoking that feeling. So those are earthy rich colors. Now, just to do a real quick review of some people that would be good examples of this type. If you go back, well, I'm a winter type, first of all. Nobody is just one type of coloring. There's different percentages. I'm 90% of this high contrast type with a little bit of lively bright. I blush a little bit, a little pink tone comes up in my skin about 10% of the time. And so somebody that you would know more than me that's famous would be Elizabeth Taylor, is a wonderful example of a high contrast type. Cher, Johnny Depp. There's lots of strikingness in their coloring. And then a lively bright type, that would be that buoyant pink undertone in the skin, would be somebody like Meg Ryan, Renee, how do you say her name? I can't even remember now. She was in the Johnny Cash movie, blue-eyed, light bright blonde type. Another important thing to mention too is different races also have different skin tones in their color. In other words, Oprah Winfrey is a wonderful example of a lively, bright type. She has a buoyancy and clarity in her skin, a brightness to her eyes, but it takes a lot of practice to be able to see the different subtle pigments in one's skin. That's just experience, and but very important to know. And subtle blended type, a good example is Uma Thurman, has that blended quality, and Grace Kelly from the 60s, 50s, 60s. She was a wonderful example of a subtle blended type. And then earthy rich, there's so many types. Katharine Hepburn and Kevin Costner, he would be what we'd call a green-eyed, a tawny, rich type. Jane Fonda. In other words, a lot of people think of these people as blonde and maybe they'd be a light, bright spring type. But in fact, there's a tawniness to that earthy rich type's skin coloring. Gives it a whole different overall effect, which we identify as earthy rich. So colors is one part of working with somebody and their appearance and clothing. But style lines that we work with is equally important, and that involves bone structure. And what has been found, and it's incidental and very coincidental and interesting, is people with high contrast coloring like myself and subtle blended types tend to have an oval shape to their face and bone structure. And we're not really sure why that is, but that tends to be very much seen. A lively bright type or spring feeling in a person, there's usually roundness. Oprah Winfrey has a little bit of a roundness in her cheekbones and eyes. And you pick up that shape in different aspects of a person's face and often body too. Earthy rich types are dominantly geometric types. You'll see very strong square face in somebody like Katharine Hepburn, and sometimes even asymmetrical features. Lauren Hutton, model from the 60s, has a very uneven face, which was also what was so fascinating about her, but a very overall geometric quality to her face. Hand shapes too. Mine tend to be more oval, long fingers. That is somewhat associated with a striking type, but that also goes into something called style lines, which would make me a classic type. And